You know what I love about making videos like these, guys? Is that while I'm preparing them, I inevitably end up learning something new myself, and fixing mistakes in my templates too. Oh, and by the way, huge thanks for the likes, comments and subs. Seriously, wow. I'm really happy that people find my videos useful. Today I'd like to show you my somewhat unconventional drum parallel compression setup, and explain why not all compressors can actually handle it. Alright, as far as I know, classic parallel compression on drums can be described with the following points. The original uncompressed signal retains all its transient information, that initial snap or attack, while the compressed signal brings up the quieter details, fills in the gaps and adds body and sustain. The result is a drum sound that feels both powerful and dynamic. While parallel compression can add punch, it also allows for better control over the dynamic range of the drums. The heavily compressed signal acts as a sort of glue, evening out the volume differences between the loudest and quietest hits. Parallel compression helps blend the individual drum elements together, creating a more cohesive and unified drum sound. So in my opinion, parallel compression is more about sustain and richness, rather than aggressive attack. However, many experienced producers don't really overthink what's going on under the hood, they just say that drums with parallel compression sound more exciting and more fun. And some of them actually use compressors with settings that lean more toward the snappy side, like the API 2500 with moderate attack times around 3 milliseconds, which surprisingly still retains transients, or the Chandler Zener limiter compressor, which Jens Bogren sometimes uses with these settings, equivalent to about 36 milliseconds. But don't let that number fool you, this is a diode bridge compressor, not VCA. So even though 36 milliseconds is usually enough to let a drum transient through, the sound of this compressor is still going to be very different from a VCA unit with the same attack time. Fatter, heavier and more colored. People love parallel compression and use it because, let's be real, even if the drummer hits like a Hulk in the room, it rarely ends up sounding like that on the raw recorded tracking. Mics just capture it differently, it usually comes out softer. So, recently I mixed a beautiful track by my bro Ivan and his project called Dawn Protection. This is some seriously underrated music, and if you're into dreaming, thought-provoking prog, you're gonna love it. I'll be using it in this video if you don't mind. So, I'll show you a list of compressors I've found over the years, the ones I switch between depending on the song I'm mixing. The main idea behind my setup is that I use two parallel compressors. One is really fast and focuses on sustain, glue, energy and body, but it strips away the transients. And the other is slower, with the main job of emphasizing the attack. Most of the compressors from the first category are some sort of 1176 variation, but there are nuances. Not all compressors are fit for this job. To be honest, very few actually are. For those of you just starting out, I'm sending these tracks pre-fader and post-effects. That means my drum tracks are already processed the way I like them before they hit the parallel compressors, and my fader movements on the drum tracks don't affect the input of the compressors, which is very important. So yeah, you might see some strange send values, that's just because my gain staging is kinda messy. Usually people send post-fader and keep the shells at unity gain, so the compressor reacts to fader movements directly. So, let's finally dive in and start with the fast and sustainy parallel channel. Here's the compressor I've used for ages for this role, a Softube's FET compressor. And that's because it does a really great job at adding sustain to a snare. Let's check it out. Sounds cool, doesn't it? Now, let's try the UAD's 1176 FET. Sounds kinda similar, right? But can you hear how it compresses the kick drum a bit more with the same settings? And when you're trying to turn the Softube's attack to the fastest, for it to catch the kick, the snare starts to sound a bit unpleasant. And that's exactly why I like the UAD version more these days. I want my kick to be compressed roughly the same as the snare, so I don't have to dial the send down or set up a separate parallel compressor just for the kick. Now let me show you how this problem is handled by a compressor I used to use a lot back in the day, a supercharger by Native Instruments. See, the kick just walks right through like it owns the place. The compressor is just not fast enough to catch it. That said, I really do love the character of this compressor though. Next up, the IK's 1176. To my ears, sounds fine. But again, it lets a bit too much kick through. As you may have noticed, there's still one candidate left. And I'll show you why a bit later. Now let's listen to all the fast compressors back to back. Okay, now that we're done with the washy compressors, let's see what the punchy ones have to offer. These slow attack compressors let the transients cut through when needed, bring out the attack and add some life to the overall drum mix. A compressor like this emphasizes the hits, making the playing more defined and articulate, especially in heavy music, where the drums can sometimes get a bit lost in the mix. First up, we've got two SSL bus compressors, SSL Native and IK Paracomp. The IK one is just a tiny bit more aggressive, but in this particular context they sound very similar. Take a listen. Pokey. Second one on the list is the Swiss Army knife, the Distressor by IK. It sounds pretty natural to my ears in normal mode, and a bit more pokey in opto mode. I use both depending on the context. Now this one's special. Thrill Seeker LA MK2 by Variety of Sound. And it's free, by the way. Man, this thing is just one raging opto psycho. You can even see on the screen how aggressively it squashes the drum tails while emphasizing the attack. And it clearly sounds different from anything else we've tried before. Oh, and by the way, I'm planning to switch to Mac soon. Thankfully, Thrill Seeker is x64, but I'll definitely miss one of the rather awesome free plugins, Nasty VSD, which is sadly x86 only. It's hands down the best mix bus saturation plugin I've ever used. I'm still looking for a replacement. I've tried a bunch of stuff, and while some come close, none of them sound quite as good. So if you know any plugin that's similar, please let me know in the comments, I'd really appreciate it. Now the problem with Thrill Seeker is that it changes the snare tone way more than the kick tone, even when both are sent at roughly the same levels. So if I don't want my kick to sound totally out of place after using this compressor, I'd probably need to set up two separate compressors, one for the kick and one for the snare, and I usually try to avoid that. You don't have to though. Next up, Classic Compressor by IK again. I really like how this one sounds. It's just an all-around, great sounding and underrated compressor. Like, have you seen anyone else use it? Yeah, me neither. And spoiler alert, this ended up being my final pick to blend with the first fast compressor. Here's how it sounds. Now let's listen to all of them back to back. By the way, I use a somewhat unconventional approach when it comes to dialing in parallel compression. I usually start listening to it after I've already processed the main drum tracks. It just feels more natural to me that way, makes it easier to evaluate things and make decisions. But the more I've watched top-level producers, the more I've noticed, almost all of them start the drum processing chain with parallel compression. They dial it in first, balance it with the dry drum sound, and only then do they move on to shaping the individual drum channels. Now, let's see what I could have ended up with if I followed the so-called standard parallel setup approach. I've prepared a few compressors that not only tend to work well in general for this purpose, but also work specifically well for this song. Let's start with the API 2500, the crowd's all-time favorite drum compressor. Love it! So I'm not an exception. I've always liked how it sounds on shells. And it turns out it works great as a Paracomp too. I still remember back in the day when I was a production newbie. I stumbled upon this compressor, messed up with the presets, and accidentally found that it's just perfect for drums. Good times. So all bus compressors seem to work well here. So here's another one, the SSL native bus comp. This time with two different settings. But spoiler, that's not the one that crushed the rest. Now let me show you the winner, in my opinion. Honestly, I didn't expect this one to shine like it did, but the way it worked out in this mix is just awesome. The glue, the punch, all stayed intact. It is presented in two different settings too. I kept the 10 milliseconds and 4:1 ratio, but the second one is 3 milliseconds and 10:1 ratio. I'd love to see in the comments which settings you liked better. Let me know. A lot of people blend the Paracomp and the dry signal roughly 50-50. As for me, I just edit the taste depending on what the track needs. So, let's compare the chains. Now let's hear all of that in the context of a full drum mix. This is how my chain sounds. And here's the townhouse alone. Remember I told you there was one less compressor I hadn't shown in the washer chain? Well, that's because I wanted to show you how to replace any of them with a distressor, in case you don't have any good 1176 emulations or any other plugin I've used today. And although it's not a 100% effective, it comes pretty close. Let's take a listen. Now that I've shown you all this, I'm honestly not 100% sure if my special setup worked better than the standard one. But hey, it definitely sounds different. And more importantly, it gives you the flexibility to emphasize what you want in your drum mix. Keep in mind, I do compress the individual drum channels too. And don't forget to automate. Softer sections of a song usually don't need as much parallel compression as the intense punchy parts do. If this was helpful, give it a like. If you want more stuff like this, hit that subscribe, and if you got any favorite compressors or setups you swear by, drop them in the comments, I'd love to check them out. Thanks for watching and see you next time.